Hey folks, and welcome to MLR Kickoff, another big show coming your way. We have Dallas Jackal, Chris Pennell joining us a little later on. The Professor, as always, will be breaking down parts of the game that need to be broken down. They need the musings of the Professor for them to make sense. We'll go into a little review of our game of the week, plus preview some big games coming up this week in Major League Rugby. All that and more coming up on MLR Kickoff. And now I welcome in the Professor, Pete Steinberg. Pete, you're at home. I'm on the road.
What? I don't understand what's happening.
Bizarro.
What is happening?
I know. I am down in the great state of Tennessee, in Memphis, directly across from the FedEx Forum. Thanks to FedEx, who are not sponsors of the show, but getting a free shout out. If you want to sponsor the show, FedEx, get in touch with Pete Steinberg or Aaron Castro. Great stuff. Pete, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I am home the whole of this week.
What?
I know, it feels special. Picked up the kids early from school and went to the park. It was 64, so beautiful day. Yeah, one of those great February days in Denver. And I've literally been sprinting the first 2 months of the year for work, and this week is not. I mean, I have a little bit of time to breathe this week, but it sounds like you're being a little crazy. Because weren't you in Houston, or were you like just connecting in Houston?
Literally 3 days ago. Hey, just a little rant here. Hey, when you're walking through the airport on your one trip a year, and you see that guy or girl walking through, and you're like, and they get on the plane first, you're like, God, that must be nice. It's not. It's not. What you need to do to get to that level of status is not worth it. I would rather figure out a way to make more money and pay for the first-class tickets. But yes, I am in the middle of what is going to be a bit of a grind here, working through some stuff. So, but
it gives you chances to watch the games, right? Like you can get on the rugby. So I've told you I watched games on the Rugby Network on my United flight using my VPN. I do that often. Yeah. You need to do that.
I'm on my American airline flight because I take care of the people that take care of us, Pete. Man, eventually you will get that.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm in Denver. I can't. I was executive platinum on American for a number of years, but too many connections coming out of Denver. I kept it for 1 year, and then I was like, I can't do that anymore.
Connections are the worst part of traveling, that's for sure, and that's what I do every week now. All right, let's jump into our game of the week. It was San Diego, Houston, 31-20. San Diego on the road, improved to 3-1. Just quietly, I'm kind of surprised they're 3-1. They've had a couple of obviously close games, but they're sitting good here on the West Coast, up there with LA and Austin on top, but Seattle as well. So they're in the mix.
Well, I mean, and San Diego have done this with a bunch of injuries.
Yeah,
they have a bunch of injuries, and so this was really, really impressive. I did this game with Dallin Stanford. It was very windy, and it was 20-21 San Diego at halftime, but Houston had maybe about a 12-mile-an-hour wind at their backs, and so Houston had some opportunities. I think they were held up 3 times in the game, but this is what I do. I want to dive into the stats. Okay, into the stats. So we're going to dive into the stats. So a couple of things, crazy stats in this game, Dan, crazy stats. So Houston have 88 tackles. Give me a guess of the number of tackles that San Diego had.
Can I phone a friend?
I'll give you over under 200.
Over
200. 244 tackles.
Mental.
That's crazy. Michael Smith, and I talked to Danny Lee, the coach of San Diego, before the game. Michael Smith had 26 tackles. Open side five. Matt Moulds, hooker, had 21.
Moulds?
Like nuts. Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, nuts, right? So these are really crazy numbers. So this is all about Houston not really taking advantage. And then Will Hooley, really managed that game well. Houston had a lot of pressure on the had a lot of pressure defensively that they were placing on San Diego. San Diego, he had like 3 or 4 kicks. I think one of which led to a try by Maroney. I think 2 actually led to tries kicking over the top. No second line cover coming across for Houston. So I think that may have been something they scouted. But San Diego showing that they really have the opportunity to be good, because this was a good team. I mean, some of the other stats is that San Diego had some penalty issues. They had 16 penalties called against them, and Houston were like 14 out of 15 in their lineouts. Their lineouts were good. San Diego only 4 out of 7. So that was a real problem. So really interesting game here. I think Houston is a good team. I'm not sure where their firepower comes from, right? It looks like they have to grind it out a little bit. I think that Kurtzer, who's their young fly half, is a good player, but I'm not sure he really gets them onto the front foot. For San Diego, having both Hooley and Peterson allowed them to have 2 pivots. That gave them a little bit more options. And then they just defended, especially when Houston got near the line. And when they were being physical and they were just trying to get over the line, San Diego didn't let it happen.
Yeah. Great Olivia Newton-John song. Physical.
Let's get physical.
Yeah. Maybe Houston needs to just put that on in the gym this week and get fired up, little ONJ, which is short for Olivia Newton-John. Star of Grease for all the kids out there. Go watch it. The OG with John Travolta. Great movie. All right. I was pleasantly surprised. I think there was 3 games kind of running at the same time with this one. So there was the 2 8:00 games. I think you guys kicked off.
We kicked off at 9.
Yeah. So I was pretty entrenched in the Austin-Seattle game, so I missed quite a bit of this game.
Yeah. That was another good game.
It was a weather game. It's funny. I agree with you on Will Hurley. I feel like that was a really well-managed game from him at 10, and I thought he would play a lot more 15 this year, but I think putting Peterson at 15 and allowing him to pick and choose his involvement at first receiver may be the right way to go for Daniel.
And Peterson, even in his late 30s, still has a burst. He has that burst to kind of get through the line, right? Which is maybe something Will Hooley doesn't quite have at fullback. So I think that's good. But that Seattle Austin game, that's that Austin team. They're a good team.
Everything says loss for them the way they've been playing, because you're going to a narrow field at Starfire, torrential rain. Everything falls into the defensive strength of Seattle up there, but they just out-muscled them. They found a way, and got to give credit to Sam Harris, Mark Gerard, and the whole crew there in Austin. Got it done again, 4-0. So looking good. All right, Pete, let's move on. Our guest for tonight, I'm trying to draw a comparison here. Play over 200 games in the Premiership for one club is quite incredible. It's equivalent of probably like close to a 10-year career in the NFL for one team. And this guy did that, had a brilliant career. It got to the point where he was asked to start looking at a transition. And as you will hear, decided he wasn't ready. And Worcester's loss is Dallas's gain. So let's bring him in, Chris Pennell. All right, joining us now is Dallas Jackals fullback, former Worcester Warrior, Chris Pennell, and big fella, trading the chilly winters of Worcester for the even chillier winters of Dallas. Welcome to Major League Rugby.
Thanks for having me.
So you hold the distinction of being a one-club man. You're a Worcester Warrior, your entire career, over 200 games for the Warriors. Did you ever see yourself in Dallas, Texas, wrapping up the career playing rugby in America?
Well, no. If I'm honest, not a chance. But I'm feeling very lucky to have had the opportunity. And I think when you're sort of in England, and as you alluded to earlier, you're thinking about the sort of cold, dark winter days. You can't help but look abroad sometimes. Envy of some of your former teammates who have gone to sunnier climes. So it's always something I have fancied doing, but other than sort of a couple of years ago, I wouldn't have put any money on it being over in the MLR. But I'm very, very pleased that it is.
No, I actually, when I found out Turks and Caicos had a rugby team, I went digging through the family archives, but unlucky for me, no Turks and Caicosians in the thing. So give us your initial impressions. Obviously, you come into an expansion franchise in Dallas. We've seen the stadium now, gorgeous facilities. How have things stacked up on that side of things compared to what you left back in England?
Oh, I mean, like you say, we've got a stadium to die for, really. It was fairly awe-inspiring. I actually I drove straight through a red light the first time I approached the stadium, because you kind of came around the corner. You had the AT&T on one side, you had Globe Life Field straight in front of me, and then Choctaw Stadium to my left, and I was just sort of probably a little bit jet lagged and ploughed straight through a red. So I was quite lucky to get away with that. The roads were quiet, but I've been hugely impressed. The facilities are obviously, we're incredibly lucky with that, and just generally, like the professionalism so far has been phenomenal. The group of guys that we've got, some unbelievable talent. There's people who are at a level in rugby that I wasn't anticipating. Sort of really pleasantly surprised with the crop of talent that we've got to work with, that's for sure. So kind of mixture of jet lag, a mixture of excitement, apprehension, and I've genuinely loved it so far. There's been some incredible challenges, with it being an expansion team, as you say, but that's all part of it. That was part of the attraction.
So let's talk about what, like, the process of even thinking. You said that you weren't even thinking about Major League Rugby. How did it even come up? Like who started the conversation? Did you start it? Did someone else start it? And talk about like how you made that decision to join Dallas.
Well, I have always kind of kept an eye on Major League Rugby, and when it sort of started, this is now 5th season, isn't it? So a few years back now. We all, all the boys in the changing room are like, have you seen that things could be happening over in the States? Can you imagine if it takes off over there? Like, how much fun that would be. So it's kind of always been on the back burner. And then when we made the decision that I wasn't going to continue in a playing capacity at Worcester, I think sort of plain and simply, I wasn't ready to hang up the boots. I still felt like I could play the game the way I wanted to play. And I've kind of always said, if the body feels good and the heart and the head is still in it, then I'm going to just keep going as long as I can. And if I was going to play at another club, I wanted it to be something very different. So after sort of a lot of deliberation and conversation with the family, got chatting to ELAINE, and sort of just fell in love pretty much straight away with the idea and the scale of the project, I guess, and sort of loads of things fell into place. It kind of ticked a lot of the boxes in terms of wanting to carry on playing, but also wanting to give back to a game that's given me so much. So from that point of view, there sort of wasn't any other team other than Dallas that really sort of I guess grabbed my imagination, and it was just it was such a compelling opportunity. It was too good to turn down.
Now, last year's expansion team, LA, came in and hit the ground running, and what they talked about that was really interesting was that there was a real opportunity to create a brand new culture, right? Like there's nothing existed before that year, and Dallas is in the same boat, and you as the captain and one of the leaders, like was that a daunting challenge? And how have you kind of like taken this sort of there's nothing to build on, we've got to create it from scratch? Yeah,
they kind of they set the standard a little bit last year, didn't they? It's quite big shoes to fill, but
to be fair, you've had two great performances, right, this year that kind of like really stepped up and showed everyone that you could play with the best. So there's culturally something going on there, right, that can help the players play their best.
Yeah, I think you have to look at what ELAINE is building, and it's fairly clear that this isn't it's not a short-term thing. This is something where we're really looking at sort of 5 years from now and having like a very sustainable rugby pathway here in Dallas. So it's certainly, you know, we've stepped into the unknown hugely as an organisation and as a team. Sort of where do we fit in amongst these already established and pretty good sides? So yeah, we've been I guess pleasantly surprised in a way, you know, that we've put in performances the way we have, and it's certainly given us a lot of confidence that we can compete. And the really exciting thing for us is, you know, we've been training together for 8 weeks, and with a few snow days chucked in as well. So like, you think about from where we were from day one when we first arrived in pre-season to where we've got to already. It's incredibly exciting, and not only that, it's who we're doing it with as well. You know, we're building a team around domestic talent, and a lot of boys who were sort of stuck behind regular starters weren't getting a huge amount of game time. And you only look at what's happened. You've given these people an opportunity, and they're hungry. So it's such a unique situation that we find ourselves in, and I think the way that ELAINE wants to go about it makes it even more exciting. It's not necessarily about, fair play to LA coming in their first season and doing what they did, but this is about more than that for us. I think this is about setting the foundations for something that is hopefully going to be long-lived and have will impact a lot of local kids here in Dallas that one day will aspire to be Jackals players.
You've mentioned a few times about long-term. Obviously, you get to the end of your playing days with Worcester, which was the inspiration to come to the States. Is the plan for you to stay in the US? Are you wanting to transition off the field, whether it be into coaching, front office? You've got a young family. Are they going to eventually move to the US? Is that kind of in the cards for you? Is that part of the motivation to come over to America?
It's I would never be crazy enough to rule anything like that out, because we just don't know. We don't know what the opportunity may or may not be. I think I'm very much kind of taking this experience as like one step at a time, and haven't ever really had like the drive and the ambition to coach as such. However, in saying that, my father was a cricketer. And he told me he went from playing to coaching. Again, no intention of ever coaching. And he told me that he got far more joy from coaching than he ever did playing. And that sort of stuck with me, because it's not something that I would necessarily aspire to do, but sometimes that's the best situation to be in. Do you know what I mean? Like, these things kind of just happen.
Yeah.
So I would never rule it out. I certainly wouldn't rule out moving over here full time. But I also need to be careful, because I've got an incredibly supportive boss back home with property surveying that I'm doing over in Worcester, who has kindly granted me the time to come out and do what I'm doing with rugby. So if I told him, listen, I'm not going to come back, that might upset him, but he might.
So hold on. Can we, hey, Stats Boy, can we geo-block this in the UK?
Give him a plug, Penners. Just give his business a plug.
Yeah. Give the business a plug.
We have a huge outreach. Like, I mean, this show goes far and wide. So who is he? What's the company? And how do they get in contact to get their construction surveying done by this group?
Yeah, so I look like Voldemort, by the way, in my camera. Can you guys see that?
No.
It looks awful. So it's Clark and J Chartered Surveyors, and we've got offices in Worcester, right across the Cotswolds, Herefordshire. So yeah, they're really good people. Nice family-run business. Very supportive of me as well. So I owe them an awful lot.
There you go. If you're building the right way in Worcester, the right way is Clark and J. There you go. Get on.
That's good.
All right, so we won't get you in trouble. I didn't realize I was leading you down a path there where your boss is going to be like, hang on a second. He said he'd be back in August. What's going on? Now, your dad made the transition. It's a little different standing in the field in 10 hours in Mumbai in the middle of summer to an air-conditioned box. Obviously, rugby, you're a little bit more intimately involved in the outcomes over 80 minutes. Who are some of the best coaches that you've had throughout your career that, you know, would kind of inspire you to go down that path?
Oh, that's a very good question. And I've been sort of spoiled really with the quality of coaching that I've experienced. I think the guy who had the biggest impact on my career was Dean Ryan, who was our director of rugby for 3 and a bit seasons. And when he first started, he brought in Shane Howarth, who was our backs coach. The two of them had a very big impact on me. They sort of, I guess like the biggest thing they did for me was just instilled a huge amount of confidence. You know, even when I made my premiership debut, age 19, I felt like a real imposter, to be honest. I didn't feel like I was good enough to be there, didn't deserve to be there. And you just kind of played with fear pretty much for the first 5 years of my career. So when those guys came along and sort of, I guess, put an arm around me, they just got me to go and play, not think too much, just go and play and do what came naturally. And that was very, very liberating. So I certainly played some of my best rugby under them. And I've tried to sort of pass that on to young guys who are ask for advice on stuff. I try and just really encourage the whole thing about not overthinking. You know, there's a reason why you're playing where you're playing and you've got this far, and it's because there's an awful lot of things that just come naturally to you. You just got to back your instincts and go for it. Then the likes of Sam Vesty and Matt Sherratt, with my sort of latter years at Worcester, those guys were great. Neil Doak as well, Northern Irishman. To be honest, with the sort of the treadmill that is Worcester Warriors, I've been through an awful lot of directors of rugby and an awful lot of quality coaches. So blessed in a lot of ways. Got to mention Gary Gold as well, who was an incredible.
It only took him 200 games to figure out what the real problem was, huh?
Yeah, that's fine.
Dan's the funny. I'm the straight man. Dan's the funny guy.
That's
so
right.
I want to talk a little bit about Dallas. You know, you've mentioned that the quality has been surprising, and I think we hear that from a lot of the foreign players and coaches that come over here. They're surprised. And I think the challenge, right, is that actually every team has 15 to 20 really good players. But the really good teams have like 35 really good players, right? And it's like once you get past that 15 to 20, that's often the challenge. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the younger North American guys, whether US or Canadian, that you think have a real future in this game, that you've been impressed by with their raw potential? Yeah,
I mean, there's some absolute. There's some freak athletes. I mean, that's like the first thing is that, you know, you get in the gym and you get on the field and you just look at even just the way that the guys move compared to a lot of our athletes back home. You're absolutely right in terms of like that is the difference, isn't it, between the sort of the good squads or the top of the table squads and I guess the rest of us as things stand. And the challenge, I guess, is for the rest of us is how to upskill those people as quickly as we can. But I mean, it's difficult for me not to sort of single a few people out. Like genuinely, the standard has been really good across the board. But I think the biggest point of difference is for the group that we've got here, and I'd imagine it's the same across all of the MLR teams, is when you have youngsters coming through back home, generally it's quite a strange dynamic, because you get a minority who are just sort of really hungry to learn, and they will pick your brains and they'll work with you. And then there's probably the majority who are all unbelievably talented kids and have made it to play Premiership rugby, and therefore the book is closed and they don't really want to learn from you anymore. And it's actually about, what do I need to do to overtake this guy to sort of be a starter? And those roles are flipped here. Like the majority, in fact, I can't think of any young guy that we've got at Dallas who they all fit into that camp where they are just so desperate to learn and so desperate to improve their game constantly. There's no sort of trying to claw over the top or drag someone down. It's like they're constantly trying to learn, constantly trying to get better, and are hungry for it. And it just in such an incredibly positive way. And I think that's probably a cultural thing, isn't it, for the US, I'd imagine. That is incredibly refreshing. So when I said that I've been impressed with the standard, it's actually like, it's the attitude. It's the attitude that these guys have got. And when you've got good people who are striving to better themselves and doing it, going about it in the right way, there's hopefully across the league, we're going to see, the standard just keep improving, and we're going to cause some headaches for Gary Gold and his coaching team, because I'd imagine that, the talent pool that is being created now, it's going to be incredibly exciting for USA rugby overall.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. You're right about there's a little bit more of a learning culture, I think, in sports in general, but also very few of the players that you have started the game when they were in single digits, right? When they were like 6 or 7. Most of them have probably played the game less than 10 years and haven't had access to the elite coaches that probably players that have like made it to Worcester, right? They don't get there without maybe going to a good school or playing in some of the age grades. And so it can be really refreshing. So when you look at that growth, and when you look at the season, how would you define success for the Jackals? Like when you look back at the end of the season, what are your measures for success as an expansion franchise?
Yes, it's a great question, and again, I think this is where maybe my perception of American sport, it's all about wins and losses, isn't it? And where it's been quite refreshing has been, this is, like I've said about long term, and I've said about growth a few times, but that is definitely the message that we've had from ELAINE and from the coaches and from the ownership as well. We've got to be realistic. As I said, we came together 8 weeks ago, and that wasn't all of us. And you look at sort of how far we've grown from that point. For me, and I said this when I first signed with the Jackals, and I did a podcast with them, the success is going to be determined by sort of how much we have grown across the season. If we can look back as to at some of the performances that we put in, certainly against San Diego and against Houston, and if we can set that as like our baseline, 6 to 8 weeks in, it's going to be quite exciting to think how far we can progress in the latter sort of 4 or 5 games of this season, to see where we can get to see how far we can push ourselves and push the franchise on. For year one, I think that'll put us in a pretty good place. And actually, the sort of classic saying that I really hate is that the results will look after themselves, but it is kind of true, annoyingly, in a lot of ways. But the point is, it will give us a very good foundation for season 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's hugely exciting, and I think as I alluded to, the group that we've got it's got room to grow to levels that I doubt half the boys that are playing realise how good they are already, which is a very exciting thing.
Well, personally, I've been really pleasantly surprised with how well you've played, considering what we saw in week 1 and what a lot of people kind of anticipated coming in. Like you said, the challenges off an expansion side, a short training camp. I think brighter days, not only with the weather in Dallas, but for the team as well. creeping up really quickly. But we appreciate you coming on. We'll let you get to bed. It's a big week of training down there. You've got the Utah Warriors. You'll never play on a prettier field than what you'll play on in Utah. It is unbelievably gorgeous. So make sure you got the camera ready to shoot some pictures to send back home. But appreciate you coming on the show, Chris. Best of luck for the rest of the year. Absolute pleasure having you over in not only Major League Rugby, but in the US as well, helping develop the game. Yeah.
Cheers, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
There you go, Pete. I never thought I'd meet someone that can talk more than you, but Chris may have you beat. No, just kidding. He was absolutely splendid human being. And again, I like the thought processes in Dallas because just the difficulties of doing an LA again was always going to be a tall order. But that long term, he spoke so many times about long term. We have a plan here, and he believes in it.
Yeah, I mean, look, LA had a lot of advantages over any other. It's a desirable location, right? So the ability to attract some places like Matt Giddo or Adam Ashley Cooper, it's sort of like, hey, do you want to go and spend 6 months living in LA near the beach? And they'll be like, yeah, I want to do that, right? Most places don't have that, right? New York has it. Maybe there's rumors of Chicago. Maybe Chicago have it. I don't think as much.
Santiago.
Yeah. I think San Diego, LA, and New York are probably the three places that foreign players will be like, yeah, that's where I want to go. So they have that advantage. So Dallas can't recreate that. And we have to remember Dallas, was going to come in 2021, and then with COVID, they said we're not going to do that. So I think they're doing it right. I think ELAINE's doing a great job down there. They've got young players, and we are hearing this a lot from foreign coaches and foreign players that come over here, is that they are surprised by the quality of the players that are here. But it is about the challenge isn't, there are great North American players on every team, and there's if you went back before MLR, Dan, we could probably all name the starting 15 for the Eagles and probably the starting 15 for Canada, right? Because it would be we'll take the foreign players and then we'll take the standout players that are domestic, and that's your team. And now we've got there's half a dozen number 8s that they could look at, right? There's center is going to be a really competitive position, especially with Paul Laseinde coming back to Utah. Now center, who's playing in the centers? There's a lot of depth, and that may not translate in the near term to the US Eagles zipping up the rankings, but 5 years from now it'll make a difference. Yeah. Right. And 10 years from now, it'll make a big difference. And so it's always good to hear from people like Chris, just affirming the quality of the athletes and the mindset that those athletes have to grow in the US game.
Yeah, the snowball. It's just started rolling. Inertia will get it going here. All right, mate, let's jump into the professor's breakdown. I love this part. I get to go in the lab and actually Gintz takes the camera off me. I have a little snooze, and then they nudge me. They've got a little virtual hand here that kind of pokes me and wakes me up. I'm just kidding, Pete. It's my favorite part of the show. 101 with the professor. I'm Ron Burgundy comes back again for another question, because why is there a line out? Why is there a line out?
Why is there a line out? So, line outs are interesting. Line outs happen when the ball goes out of bounds, or in rugby we say into touch. And it's a way of restarting the game. It's interesting. If you want to know if someone really knows the game of rugby, you can ask them about the line-out laws and whose line-out it is, because that can actually be pretty confusing. And with some recent law changes, even more confusing. But there's a line-out because the ball goes out of bounds. The ball can go out of bounds because someone who is touching the ball puts their foot on the line. Right, and so that ball is out, or the ball hits on the line or hits out of bounds. Right, those are ways to be able to go into touch. And then the line out exists because in rugby we like contest. Right, we like to be at a contest possession. So we talked just now about San Diego. San Diego only won 4 out of 7 lineouts, and that's because at every lineout there is a contest. Right, and so the way that we want to restart the game is we want to restart it with a contest, meaning that the team that's throwing the ball in, they have an advantage because they know where the ball's going, but the team that isn't throwing it in, they can still contest. They can get up in the air and they can steal that ball. So when the ball goes into touch, right, and it's a little confusing about whose line out it is, I don't think we'll dive into that there, but when the ball goes into touch, there's a line out, and that line out is a contest for possession. And that's why you'll see people, they will kick the ball away to gain territory. And even if the ball goes out of bounds and into touch, they know they still have a chance of winning it. And actually throughout the game, if teams feel like they have an advantage in contesting the line out, they'll actually kick it into touch more. So that's why there is a line out. Now, Dan, you're a big boy. Have you ever jumped in the line out?
Nope.
Like no one ever lifted like, your 6'4" frame up in the air?
Nope. No interest in doing that at all. I'm, terra firma. Very happy. I tell you what's interesting, though, is you talk about the confusion at the line out. Remember a few weeks ago where the red card issue up in Seattle with the scrum, and then it happened to Six Nations? There was a bunch of Seattle and MLR fans going, oh, I know what's coming here. we just went through this. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Well, thanks, Professor. Obviously, we'll dig a little deeper into the line-out, maybe some of the tactical stuff or why teams do certain things in the line-out as we move through the progression here of the different phases of rugby. But let's jump into the games this weekend. Before I start, are you doing any games? So I have to be careful here if not getting
I am doing a game.
No games?
No, I am doing a game, but I'm actually not sure which game it is. Hold on.
Rot-row.
Let me pull this up. I have one game this weekend, so I head to Indianapolis. I'm doing it with Ben Holden.
Oh, Big Benny's back.
Yeah, Big Benny's back, but I'm actually I can't remember what game it is. So, oh man, no, I can't find it. I will. Well, which game are we going to do the deep dive on, Dan?
You have to pick that.
Well, I think I want to do LA Austin because I think it's probably the most interesting game.
Well, New York, New England would be the other one. Those two are the big ones this week.
I think they're both good, but I really like the LA Austin game just because I looked at the stats and Austin are like ridiculous good, like as good as LA were last year. I want to dive in because I think they're doing something really special. So
you're ruining my rundown here that Aaron puts a lot of time in.
Sorry.
Okay. After we finish this.
Rugby ATL hosting the Houston SaberCats.
Atlanta. Okay, perfect. Yeah. All right. So let's kick things off. We go back to Friday night footy, 10:30 Eastern on FS2. Ooh. That is a late one on a Friday night. So if you're out and about, ask the pub or the bar or the establishment to flick it on over to FS2 and drive those numbers up. It's NOLA on the road against Seattle, Pete. What are you thinking here?
Oh, I think it's Seattle. I mean, I think Seattle played well against Austin. It was a really good game. Like I said, I think Austin are the class of the pick, and Seattle had some chances to win that game. And, NOLA have been struggling. They had a late change in coach, right? I think they've got a couple of players that have been out, but I don't think and NOLA's getting to the point where they need to start they need to win some of these games, or their running's going to be really, really tough. So I'm going with Seattle here. I think NOLA have the firepower to keep it close, but they need to show something that they haven't shown yet.
Yeah, I think Seattle bounced back. I think Brad Tucker's back this week, which will help. They missed him on the weekend in those rain games. He's just such a presence in the midfield. I'll go Seattle as well. All right. On to Saturday, 3 p.m. Houston at Atlanta. Did I say 3 p.m. Houston? 3 p.m. Eastern. Oh, I'm getting excited. Houston at Atlanta, and praise be, Pete can't talk about this one, so I get to go.
I can talk about it. I just can't predict it because, I can talk about anything. Well, there's going to be some bruised bodies at the end of this game. These are probably two of the most physical packs in the league that are going to go at it. And so it's going to be it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how these teams manage it. I think penalties will be really important because territory is going to be so important in this game.
Well, I've actually really enjoyed watching the games at Silverback Park. Looks like a really good venue. Like, shows well on TV.
Yeah, I agree.
It'll be a good game. I don't know. Atlanta's impressed me. Only loss is to New York, who are undefeated. So Houston, what are they? 500, 2-2. So LA, and they beat Dallas. They just beat Dallas, but yeah, I don't know. You'd give the advantage to Atlanta at home, wouldn't you?
I think so.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it. All right. Well, hang on a second. Now the run's out of order. This says it's at 12 p.m. Eastern, Dallas at Utah. That can't be right. That cannot be right because it's in Utah, which is Pacific time. So, yeah, you're muted, buddy, too. I had an issue with the mutes earlier today. Anyway, Dallas is playing Utah at some point on Saturday in the Rugby Network. Open the app, click on it. It'll give you a countdown.
I'm doing it right now. You just keep filling.
So this will be – listen, we saw – great to have Chris on the show. You want Dallas to do well.
It's noon Mountain Time, so 2 p.m. Eastern.
2 Pacific. So this should be before the Houston-Atlanta game. Yeah. Anyway, boy, that scrum looked just decimated. Like New York pummeled them in the scrum. Yeah. I think Utah probably one of the more dominant scrums in MLR. They've got a little softer at the lineout, but not in the scrum.
No, the scrum is good, yeah.
Boy, oh boy. Could be a long day at the office, especially if they get good ball off that set piece. Teo and Crusade can really do some damage. And they're probably chomping too because they've been a little handcuffed. But I'll go Utah here in this one, and I think they'll be pretty comfortable too.
I agree. I think Utah here pulling away.
All right. Saturday night on the Rugby Network. It's the big one, Pete. It's LA at Austin. Big brother versus little brother. Who you got?
I think I have Austin. Do you want me to dive deep on this now, or do you want me to wait?
Go on. I know you just...
Yeah, I'm chomping. I'm just ready to go. All right, hold on. Now I've got to find... I'm so excited. I can't find my Excel spreadsheet that I was looking at. All right, let's have a look at this, right? So I'm going to tell you how good Austin are. Okay, so Austin have scored more tries than anyone else. A lot more tries than anyone else. They've scored 21 tries. And yes, they've got one more game than LA, but LA have scored 9 tries.
Yeah.
The closest is the Legion that have 17. So these guys can score, right? They have the most clean breaks, right? They have 22 clean breaks. That's the most. Toronto Arrows have 19. They have they have a good tackle percentage, right? So it's 85%. The Giltinis are at 90%. So the Giltinis have a little edge there, but the Gilgronis have almost double the number of dominant tackles. So that's like so maybe LA has a little advantage, but only just. Austin have the best lineout in the league. They're at 92%. They've created more turnovers than anyone else. It's just nuts. Like, they're just really, really good. And I don't know, like the LA team that I've seen without Guido or Cardi, Luke Burton's a great player. Just don't think he's the solution for 10. I mean, I think they moved Goddard to 10 in that second half. I don't see LA scoring enough points against this Gilgronis attack that is like averaging 40 points a game or something. Like I think Austin are the standout so far through 4 weeks in Major League Rugby.
It's hard to argue. Undefeated. It's just them in New York are the only undefeated teams left now. So did I forget someone? I don't think so.
Nope.
So yeah, I'll give this my stamp too for the game of the week for sure. LA Austin. I think Austin, little brother, have a little chip on the shoulder and probably more to play for in this one. But you never know with LA. They could have circled this one and said,
"Oh, it's circled.
Yeah.
It's circled." Like I don't think Austin blows them out. I'm just saying it's at Austin again, and Austin are like flying, and the Giltinis aren't. Mm-hmm. And I think some of that is at 10, and I don't think they've got a solution until either Guido or Cardi come back, and that's not happening for a few rounds. So I don't think there's a solution for the challenges that the Giltinis have.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. We kind of bated breath. We had Matt Guido on the show last week, and it wasn't really a timeline for his return. So LA fans, just hold on there. All right, moving to Sunday, 3 p.m. This is a big one. New York versus New England in Hoboken on the Rugby Network. They christened their new ground there over in Hoboken, which will be pretty cool. I think the scenery will be actually quite nice. I don't know if you know where the ground is, but it's got a great view of downtown Manhattan. Midtown. Sorry, trying to get my where Hoboken is. But Pete, I don't know where to go on this game because both of these sides have looked very good this year.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great game. This is the other game to kind of like dive a little deeper in. New York, I think, have the edge on the Free Jacks in the lineout, and if the weather's bad, right, there's going to be a lot of kicking. If there's a lot of kicking, there's a lot of lineouts, and that might actually be where they can have a little bit of an advantage. So I'm actually leaning New York, but I think it's going to be close, and I think the lineout's going to be important.
Yeah, I don't know. Sorry to put you on the spot. Do you know the head-to-head between these two?
Like historically?
Yeah.
I don't, but we've got Stats Boy. That's putting him on the spot.
Let's do DC San Diego really quick. We're not talking about LA anymore, Aaron. He's put it in the chat. We're talking about New York and New England. Good to see everyone else is just as bored with this chat as we are. All right, we'll move on. We can come back to that. DC San Diego rounders out Sunday night on the Rugby Network. This one at San Diego, and oh my God, poor DC getting on a plane, flying across the country at 0-4, and they'll be going home 0-5.
Yeah, they'll be going for so some things that we're looking for in DC. So their scrum has held up pretty well considering they have a couple of like young US players in the front row. I'm not sold on their new fly half, their Samoan fly half. I'm not sure about him. Owen Sheehy's really showing that he's got some good play. I think DC have some things that they can do. I just don't think they can do consistently. And San Diego are 3-1 without playing well. Like I actually feel like Marnono has kind of not really done much.
I didn't say that, Ma. That was Pete Steinberg, P-E-T-E.
And it's not that he just hasn't really had to do much, right? But he hasn't really had a game where it's felt like he's had an impact. I think Chris Robshaw had a good game last weekend and got through it, and keeping him healthy is going to be important. But I think you've talked about it's Will Hooley and Joe Peterson, and I don't think DC have that sophistication. I think this is going to be a long trip. And, it's going to be one of those things where as a coach, you identify KPIs that are important for DC for their growth. But one of the KPIs you're not going to target is the score.
Yeah, San Diego are going to roll with this one. Piece of cake. Did we ever find out what the history is? No, New York, New England? No. All right. Oh, well. I'll go. Who'd you go for, New York?
Yeah, I'm going for New York.
I had a bit of a roller coaster on Super Brew. I got up to second place at one point and then plummeted down to fifth and then steadied out to fourth, the same place I went into the weekend. So I can't, my fingers aren't strong enough to scroll down and low enough to see where you and Aaron are. But I'm sure
So we have our text chat during the games and you're like, oh, it looks like I'm going to be 1-0 for the weekend. And I'm always like, oh, crap. I didn't put in my Super Brew selections.
Well, the home teams, I think you get defaulted to the home team in a certain win percentage, and that worked out well. Houston were the only team that lost at home.
Oh.
So you end up with the same as me. That's the only game I flunked on. I went for Houston at home, and San Diego just rammed it down my throat. So, oh, well, 2-1 New York. Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you, buddy. So they do have this would square the ledger up. So there's not a definitive advantage, really. That's early days of the rivalry. That thing's going to grow over the next decade. It's going to be fun to watch. So I'll go New York as well. Just home field advantage, 1 point. Hoboken gets christened with a win. Why not? All right, Pete, anything else?
I think that's it. I think we're like rocking and rolling in the season. Like the games are coming, and it's like it is hard to keep up. I have to admit it's hard to keep up. But I'm looking forward to more games this weekend. And Dan, safe travels and get home and get some sleep.
I tell you, the season's moving a lot faster this year than last year. Leaving the studio at 1 a.m. On a Sunday night, I guess 1 a.m. Monday morning with a 6 a.m. flight out of India week after week. And I'm like, oh, it's almost semifinals, right? And they're like, it's week 3, Dan. I'm like, oh, God.
It's a grind. It's a grind.
I miss you, Kyle. Kyle still listens to the show. So
he does. Kyle, when I was there this past weekend, he says he listens to the show. And I have to say that we had the DC Toronto game that we did was just a fabulous show. Like, we haven't talked about it much here, but there's a lot that goes into the MLR broadcasts, and probably like the most important thing is a good director, someone who really knows rugby, and Carl's certainly become a good rugby director over the last couple of years. Number 2 is good cameramen. I'm pretty certain that our FS2 game, we had camera 1 and camera 2 were good cameramen, and I think we maybe had one other cut in a replay from one of the other cameras. Like, Carl had to call that game with basically 2 cameras and it's not that they're bad camera people, it's just if they've never done rugby before, it's just a very, very different monster. So the fact he was able to pull off that national game without actually having with 2 cameras was pretty nuts. But yeah, it was good to see Kyle again.
Love you, Kyle. If Pete won't give you an awkward hug, you give him one next time he's up there. Disappointed in you, Pete. One thing I asked is give Kyle a hug for me, and you can't even do it. All right, that will wrap us up. Enjoy the rugby. It's going to be a big one this week, whether you're on the East Coast for New York, New England, West Coast for Austin, LA. Enjoy it. It's going to be a big weekend, and we're going to see this table start to take shape as the weeks roll on. For the Professor, Pete Steinberg, Aaron Castro, Ryan Ginty, and our entire team at MLR Kickoff, I'm Dan Power. We'll catch you next time.